If your life looks good on paper, but internally something doesn't feel right, don't ignore that feeling. Sometimes you don't feel stuck because you need to work harder. Sometimes you feel stuck because you're still operating from that version of you that survived your past. And that version was never meant to bring you in your future. Let's break this down clearly. Most people feel like they're stuck because they lack that discipline. And a lot of the times, discipline isn't always the problem. Majority of the time, identity is. And what I mean by that is identity allows you to show up in different ways. So it allows you to determine what you're going to tolerate. Your identity allows you to determine what you're going to avoid, how, you're going to show up. It also determines if you're going to play it small or if you're going to play it big. Like, how do you see yourself? This is what the identity is. And a lot of the times that is the real issue. So if you are still seeing yourself as the person who procrastinates, as the person who's always inconsistent, as the person who is constantly overworked because it's the only way they feel like they mean something, this is how you're going to show up. So even if you decide to change your goals, right? If you want to become the person that's successful, if you want to become the person that's consistent, if your goal is to, be consistent in the gym, eat healthy, whatever your goal is, if your identity is still stuck in that past person or the past version of you, it doesn't matter. The identity isn't going to match the goal, which is why you won't hit the goal. So you have to shift the identity in order to become the version of you that you're trying to achieve, because you can't outperform how you see yourself. Okay, so I want you to think of the version of you that got you here. And we're thinking of the survival version of you. And that version of you, she might have had to be strong. She might have had to rely on herself all the time. She might have learned not to actually ask for help. She might have learned to stay busy so she wouldn't actually feel things. So constantly being able to occupy herself with the outside world in order to ignore the inner world, right? But that version worked for where you were in that time in your life. But to be honest, survival traits aren't expansion traits. So survival means you want to stay safe. Growth means you're going to expand. You're going to take the risk. Survival says you have to control everything. Growth says you have to trust the process. Jump, take the leap, and trust that you have your back and you'll figure it out. If you're trying to build peace and you're still stuck in the survival mode, you're gonna feel that tension. And it's not because the peace isn't available to you. It's because your nervous system hasn't actually caught up to be at that place of peace yet. So let's make this a little bit more practical, and I'll give you some examples. So the first example I'm going to give you is, say you want to become a confident person, but you still think that you're naturally not confident. If you still think you're not a confident person, you're not going to show up in the places you need to be. You're not going to take charge or take risks in the situations you were supposed to do, because internally you don't feel like you can have that authority in that space. You don't feel like you deserve to get that promotion. You don't feel like you deserve to get that raise. You don't feel like you need to take up space in a room. So even though you want to become more confident, because you don't feel like you're an actual confident person, you'll never take those steps to actually do the things that confident people will do. Another example is if you want to be in more of a healthier relationship, but you feel like the love that you deserve, you have to earn it. You're always going to be the person that overgives. You're always going to be the person that's constantly putting themselves on the line, hoping that other person's going to see your effort and give back to you. And in that space, in that time, in that place, you don't feel like you deserve that love. You feel like you have to earn the love. So you can never be the person that will get it because you always feel like you have to earn it. So you have to become the person who don't feel like they need to earn the love, who know they deserve it, and they'll show up as the person who deserves love. This is another one, and this is the one that gets people at the beginning of every year. If you want to be consistent and you think you're the person who doesn't show up, guess what? You've already told yourself that you're going to quit. And I see this so much. January 1st, everybody makes their New Year's resolution. And by February, they've already fallen off. And it's because they do it because it's something we do. It's January 1st. We make a New Year's resolution. We write down all our goals. But that doesn't mean you've changed who you are. It just means you've written down some goals and you've written down the things you want to do. But are you going to become the person that actually follows through with your goals? Or are you still going to say, I'm the person that always quits. I'm the procrastinator. I'm the person that, once it gets difficult, I don't figure it out, right? If you become that person, then of course, you're never going to complete your goals. But if you become the person that is consistent, that takes action regardless, then you will complete those goals. Remember, identity drives expectation. Expectation drives behavior. Behavior drives results. So if results aren't changing, it's not necessarily a motivation issue. More than likely, it's a self-concept issue because it's how you see yourself. Let me ask you a question. Who are you trying to become? Not externally, but internally. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be more grounded? Do you want to be the person that's more intentional? Do you want to be the person that's selective, who is really focused on, who they're becoming and their internal growth, right? So if you want to become that person, what would that person be doing today? Would they be the person that's over-explaining? Would they be the person that's procrastinating? Would they be the person that's over-giving or showing up for people who don't show up for them? These are just some examples of, the version of someone who you think you want to be or you don't want to be. So you really have to take a look at all these actions and understand that if you're trying to do something or become someone, you have to understand what that person is actually doing and start making those small decisions on every single day to become that person. So every time you set a boundary, every time you make the decision to do the hard thing now so you can have it easy later, every time you implement discipline, you implement self-care, self-love. And that could also mean, sticking to your standards, which is also a form of self-love. You slowly build closer to that version of you that you want to become. Not through pressure, but through alignment. Here's the shift you're going to have to make. You have to realize that the old version of you, you don't have to abandon her. She did what she was supposed to do. She helped you survive. She helped you adapt to the environment you were in. She helped you overcome and get to where you are right now. But you must understand, you're not in that environment anymore. And the growth that you need right now, you have to update your internal narrative. So instead of saying, how can I force change or how can I force growth? Instead, start saying, what would that future version of myself do right now? And you start to implement those small changes on a day-to-day basis, but you have to implement them consistently because you're not going to change your identity overnight. It's not going to happen that way. You're going to change it through consistent action. And consistent action is actually sustainable, but also it will implement real change. If you're in a season where it feels like you're outgrowing your old patterns, you're not alone. This channel is for women who are not just changing habits, but they're changing their identity. They're becoming the versions of themselves that they want to be. And we're not doing it under pressure. We're doing it together consistently. So if you feel like you're in that space, subscribe, because this community will help you get there. And that consistent change, that is what changes everything.